Dreamt up by former WWE head honcho Pat Patterson, the Royal Rumble match is forever a highlight of the wrestling calendar. With shock, surprises, and all manner of intriguing matchups, this over-the-top extravaganza has long been a wrestler's chance to put their first foot on that famed road to WrestleMania. And sometimes they don't main event the show and everybody gets really mad. Officially beginning life in 1988 after being tested at a house show the year prior, the Royal Rumble has taken many a superstar to the next level and made stars out of the likes of Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, Steve Austin, The Rock, Triple H, and The Undertaker. Then there's John Cena, Randy Orton, Roman Reigns, and Cody Rhodes. That's just the tip of the iceberg. The Royal Rumble, of course, isn't just about the victors because there's plenty of other iconic moments that have taken place. So with that in mind, here are the very top 100 of those Royal Rumble match moments. Number 100, Billie Kay goes recruiting in 2021. WWE did not deserve Billie Kay. Some just like to say, oh, she was filling a comedy quota, but screw that, man. Not everybody can be as funny as this, and Billie took that ball and she totally ran with it. During the 2021 Royal Rumble 2, Billie entered as number 4 and immediately started campaigning to recruit some followers to help her win the match. At the same time, she thought it would be a great idea to try and get a brand new tag team partner, because obviously that would help you not be thrown over the top rope. It meant the ex-Iconics member hang out around the entranceway waiting for the likes of Shotzi Blackheart, Shayna Baszler, and Toni Storm. And how did she try to entice them in? With a signed 8x10. I don't know why nobody took poor Billie up on her offer. It really has been one of my favorite spots ever since the Women's Rumble did come into existence, because you know me, I'm still the same old G, and I want goofy wrestling for life. Once again, Billie Kay was also very good at this. I mean, it's not like she was ever going to win the thing, so you may as well have some fun with it. I will never understand why WWE let her go just months later in April. I mean, that was totally stupid. Number 99, Right to Censor Ivory won't shut up in 2022. So the old Right to Censor gimmick in WWE is a little bit hit and miss. Some fans remember it fondly, whereas the rest of us just remember that awful entrance music they had and want to take our brains and smash it into a wall. Excuse me. Back in the day, too, of course, you had The Godfather as the good father and Val Venus not being a porn star anymore. And I regret saying that, but that was the truth. I would say that Ivory was a standout member in Right to Censor because she just totally got it, which is one of the reasons she did return during the 2022 Women's Royal Rumble. Ivory also wanted to make it clear that nothing had changed in this company since the last time she was there, which is when Rhea Ripley saw she was ranting away on the mic and threw her over the top rope. So once again, Ivory's in the same category. She totally gets it and just wanted to have fun. It also meant her big comeback lasted no more than 25 seconds, but look, here we are still talking about it. And if she had got in there and just sort of fought a few people and then been thrown over the top rope, well, nobody would have given a damn. This was much, much better and proved that Ivory will always understand. Number 98, Heath Slater thanked Sheamus in 2018. So yes, I do get it. If Heath Slater had once won the Royal Rumble, he probably would have been able to feed all of his kids, but he didn't, and that's on him. Heath knew that as well, so this was another guy that gets thrown into this group. If you're not going to be a victor, what can we possibly do to be memorable? Which is what he came up with back in 2018 when he entered at number 5. In short, Slater never made it to the ring because he was beaten up by Baron Corbin, he was beaten up by Elias, he was beaten up by Andrade, he was beaten up by Sami Zayn, when Sheamus entered at number 11, and he beat him up too. Well, no, actually he didn't, which was quite the surprise, and instead the Irishman took pity on Slater and brought him to the squared circle, which is when Slater turned on a dime and clotheslined Sheamus out of the match. I mean, genuinely, the master of the bro kick only lasted 1 second. This was actually quite the shock. Now, Bray Wyatt did eliminate Slater a few seconds after this, which probably wasn't the best idea, but it was just another fun moment, and honestly, fair play to Sheamus to agreeing for this. Nobody saw it coming, and it put a wonderful smile on your face. Number 97, Shannon Moore is a top-tier MFer in 2003. So yes, this is when Shannon Moore was the right-hand man to Matt Hardy, and honestly, when it came to the 2003 Royal Rumble, I think Shannon was having the time of his life. Because to prove his worth to Mattitude, Moore just kept saving his leader over and over and over again, to the point both of these guys made it to the middle of the Royal Rumble. Now, I want to make it clear that Shannon Moore wasn't actually an official entrance here. He was literally out by the ring so he could catch Hardy and stop him hitting the floor. It also meant when Brother Jeff tried to eliminate him, he wasn't able to. And when the younger Hardy went for the Swanton Bomb, guess who took it instead? That's right, it was Shannon Moore. Sadly, Rikishi and Kane then decided they were done with this guy and totally wrecked him, which meant eventual winner Brock Lesnar threw out Matt. I'm going to continue to repeat myself because I think it is important, but once again, I think Matt Hardy knew I'm not going to win the damn thing, so what can me and Shannon Moore do to entertain everybody? They came up with this. Dare I say it was a home run. Number 96, Asuka and Ember Moon square off in 2018. So when you do rewatch the first Women's Rumble from 2018, you will see something very interesting. Ember Moon looks like a star in the making, so what the flub happened? Somebody definitely dropped the ball there. Thankfully, she will always have this memorable sequence against Asuka from this Royal Rumble, and man, listen to the fans in Philadelphia. They totally lost their minds as both women traded blows. You'd have to imagine those backstage saw this and recognized it too, which once again begs the question, what happened after this, because it kind of turned into a nightmare. I mean, do not forget that shortly after this, she was involved in a MIDI feud over a Nintendo Switch, which is in stark contrast to here. This Royal Rumble was happening 24 hours after she'd had an NXT match with Shayna Baszler, and Ember Moon continues to sell that arm she hurt during that bout. I mean, that's some good old wrestling. Her eclipse here as well also looks totally dazzling, so once again, it will just leave you scratching your head and thinking what could have been for one of NXT's brightest stars. Number 95, Taka Michinoku faceplants in 2000. So this one is a little bit harsh, but people do still talk about it. Now, Kai-En-Tai duo Taka Michinoku and Funaki were never officially in the 2000 Royal Rumble. They decided to cause a ruckus anyway by rushing out to start off a few brawls. Now, during one of those spots, Gangrel, the big bass man, got sick of Taka Michinoku, so threw him over the ropes, and oh my gosh, he face plants into the floor so badly, Madison Square Garden actually groaned. I mean, it had to be beyond painful. If you do look a bit closer, you can see some blood coming out of his face when referees rushed out there and took Taka backstage. Because of course they did. The real controversy comes in the fact that I think the then WWE officials thought this was quite amusing, because the production truck got the word to replay this over and over and over again, to the point it got a little bit gratuitous. Eventually we even got a slow motion replay, which seems a little bit ridiculous. But I suppose fair play to Kai-En-Tai, they knew the assignment. My word, they turned it up to 100. Number 4, Michelle McCool enters from the crowd in 2023. So you could see this one coming from a mile away because the WWE announcers laid it on so thick when all of a sudden Michelle McCool was sat in the audience for the 2023 Royal Rumble. She was watching with her children too, which did make it a warm and fuzzy in your tum-tum moment. And the rest of her family did look totally stunned when Michelle's music started to play and she entered the bout at number 25. McCool actually gave it a good shot as well because she went 13 minutes before being eliminated by Rhea Ripley, who does always seem to be the person to throw out legends from this match. And look, I suppose you could say that Michelle didn't do anything special when she was in there, but she did a few good spots. She got a pop for her entrance. Really, it didn't look like she'd been away from the ring at all, and that in itself is saying something. McCool was also able to toss out Tamina and was one of 11 women responsible for getting rid of Nia Jax, and maybe one day her husband, The Undertaker, will do the same. Well, actually, no, because if we saw him sat in the audience, we'd have to call him Mark Calloway, and I never want to see that on WWE TV. Number 93, the Rumble goes hardcore in 2001. So 20 or so odd years ago, the hardcore title was very popular in the WWF. So when the Royal Rumble came around, somebody decided we should incorporate all of these elements. Therefore, the usual crew of Al Snow, Raven, Perry Saturn, and Steve Blackman all decided they would take on this mantle, which meant halfway through the Rumble, all of a sudden we had a weapons-fueled brawl. Now, given that clips of this are still shown today, they must have done something right, and at one point, Raven got a bowling ball whammed right into his testicles. I'm not sure how you faked that, it must have hurt. Jerry Lawler also lost his mind on commentary as well, which is slightly amusing. And of course, soon after this, things calmed down again. If you care as well, the Honky Tonk Man was the surprise entrance during this Rumble, and by the time The Rock walked in, my gosh, the fans lost it. We shall talk about both these guys later on in this list too, but never forget, the Honky Tonk Man thought pretending to be Elvis was going to bring him success. And I'm very sad to tell you, he never won a Royal Rumble. Number 92, everybody gangs up on Vicky Guerrero in 2018. So Vicky Guerrero's heel work certainly does divide the audience. 50% of the audience will always think her "excuse me" gets good heat, while the other 50% stick their fingers in their ears and start to cry. I suppose when we did debut the Women's Rumble in 2018, somebody in management thought this would fit in pretty well. Because Vicky walked in at number 16 just shouting her famous catchphrase over and over again, You could just feel it in your tootsie toes. You knew what was coming next. Because Guerrero basically trashed the entire roster, saying that everybody sucked, to the point when she got in the squared circle, the rest of the competitors turned around and they all ganged up to eliminate her. That was the likes of Becky Lynch, Michelle McCool, Ruby Riott, and Sasha Banks. Which also means now you know the answer to the ultimate trivia question: who eliminated Vicky Guerrero in the 2018 Royal Rumble? And the word you always need to write down is absolutely everyone. Number 91, Naomi's impressive barricade jump in 2019. So I don't know about you, but my hamstring was screaming when I saw Naomi do this in 2019. I don't get how she didn't rip it off the bone. Naomi did enter at number 16 here and immediately went after rival Mandy Rose. When the pair fought onto the ring apron, Mandy fell to the floor. Damn. She was so pissed off she tried to powerbomb her mortal enemy, but Naomi instead dropped into the Hurricane Rana position, kicked Mandy off, and then somehow scaled the ringside barrier without her feet ever touching the floor. And somewhere in the back, Kofi Kingston must have been smiling. The fun didn't stop there either, and in fact it was just getting started, because Naomi almost slipped a few times when walking along the padded lip of the barricade, and then leapt to safety by landing on the damn ring steps. So technically she was still involved in the Rumble when Rose returned and pulled her to the mats. I mean, her stunt was impressive. That was also some good villainry. Now, I will never understand how Naomi was able to keep her balance here, because this was incredibly athletic. I always enjoy it when people do this in the Royal Rumble, because the risk is certainly worth the reward. That is it for my portion of this video too, my friends. So Simon Miller is signing off, and Andy, please take it away.
Thank you, Simon. Let's keep it rolling with number 90. Kane smashes the Honky Tonk Man in 2001. As you can tell from this entry, the 2001 Royal Rumble was very silly and indeed very excellent. Steve Austin won the thing, thus claiming his third ever Rumble victory. Raven took a bowling ball to his unmentionables. Drew Carey entered as a celebrity guest, and Kane went skadoosh on Honky Tonk Man's moosh just because he could. Honky Tonk Man was a surprise entrant right before The Rock, and he ended up trying to charm the Big Red Machine and claim the spotlight by singing Kane his theme song. The Honky Tonk Man's theme song, not Kane's theme song. That'd be weird. Anyway, Kane, obviously not a fan of rhythm and indeed blues, showed a troubling lack of respect for the self-proclaimed greatest intercontinental champion of all time because, yeah, I mean, he smashed the guitar over his head. He smashed his own guitar over his head, going all Jeff Jarrett on his ass. Honky Tonk Man sold the guitar shot like a pro. He knew his role on the night and he performed it admirably. And after caving in Honky Tonk Man's skull, Kane turned his attention to Rocky and the rest of the match. His run in the Rumble was far from done. Number 89, Daniel Bryan and Roderick Strong love chops, the greatest Royal Rumble. If everyone's being honest with themselves, they'd admit that WWE's greatest Royal Rumble in 2018 was not, in fact, the greatest Royal Rumble. The 50 wrestler version of the usual format only took place once, and it only happened because the money men in Saudi Arabia chucked $50 million at WWE. They also tried to get Ultimate Warrior and Yokozuna for the show, and, well, they're a bit dead, mate. So leave it to a workhorse like Bryan Danielson to make sure that he had a good old wrestle anyway. The then Daniel Bryan indulged in a series of chops with several other wrestlers in the match, but it wasn't until Roddy Strong entered at number 34 that things got real. Strong and Bryan chopped the absolute crap out of one another, and Bryan's chest ended up looking like the Eye of Terror. Pretty gross. Afterwards, Bryan cut a spirited promo about his unbelievable 1 hour and 16-minute long performance. WWE didn't give a toss about Braun Strowman winning the match and winning that green belt after the show was over, but hey, at least Bryan took the night seriously. Number 88, Mickie James starts the TNA trend, 2022. Mickie James was both a WWE favorite and the reigning TNA Knockouts champion when she brought a little bit of hardcore country to the 2022 Women's Rumble. I say that, she was technically the Impact Knockouts champion because the rebrand back to TNA hadn't happened yet, but TNA has always been a better name, so let's just go with that. Mickie brought the belt with her, in fact, for this appearance, which was, at one point, something that would have seemed impossible. WWE under Vince McMahon was rarely in the business of promoting and working happily with other companies. companies, at least other companies they didn't own. It did happen a few times with various regional leagues like Smoky Mountain, but pushing a reigning TNA champion hard on pay-per-view was next level. Mickie lasted about 11 minutes in the match before she was eliminated by fellow legend Lita. The commentary team made a lot of noise about Mickie flying in from Impact, and overnight, fans started to wonder if there would be scope for more cross-promotional stuff between TNA and WWE. That did eventually happen, but not for a while yet. And 2 years later, things were in full swing. Number 87, Jordynne Grace and Naomi represent TNA 2024. Here, we got two TNA stars in one night, to a degree at least, as WWE combined the arrival of Jordynne Grace with Naomi's full-time comeback to the roster. Jordynne's entrance into the match turned out to be pretty funny in a way, because she was immediately the most impressive wrestler in the match, hitting the ring at 100 miles an hour and running through her spots at a blistering pace that nobody could keep up with. She looked a different class of pro wrestler, to the extent that when she slowed down a couple of minutes later, it might have been so that we could all catch our breaths. She looked incredible in the match, and she's done a bunch of stuff with NXT since then, so it's safe to say that she has made an impact in WWE. Good joke. Yep. Impact TNA. Shut up, Andrew. Meanwhile, Naomi worked just over a full hour before her future friend Jade Cargill, another surprise, threw her out of the match. This was her full-time return to WWE. She'd been killing it in TNA the year before, and now she was back. Triple H really showed off just how into the idea of working with TNA he was in the Royal Rumble. Mickie James might have brought the Knockouts belt with her 2 years before, but Grace and Naomi preceded a much more substantial union between the two promotions, and Grace's continued use in WWE suggests that when she does become a free agent, there'll probably be a nice big fat offer for her waiting in the mail. Number 86, Mil Mascaras eliminates himself, 1997. It isn't exactly common for wrestlers to muscle their way into a Royal Rumble payday as a special guest and lay down the law to management behind the scenes. That's not how brothering works, brother. You're a guest. Maybe just get paid and do what you're told, perhaps? But Mil Mascaras was no ordinary worker. He was Mexican pro wrestling royalty, and he was only worried about one thing: doing the job. Yes, even in a Rumble where he doesn't have to be pinned. Bruce Pritchard has dished the details via his podcasts on what Mil told Vince McMahon and other WWE officials backstage before agreeing to work the Rumble. He didn't want to be eliminated by anyone else, thus doing the job, and said that instead he would fly out of the ring on his own. It wasn't much of a plan, but WWE went for it anyway. Vince McMahon explained on commentary that Mil just didn't understand the rules of the match and had gotten a little bit carried away as he scaled the top rope and leapt out, eliminating himself from the match. That was certainly one way to describe what he did, but it just made him look like a complete dumbass. Keep in mind that Mil Mascaras is one of the most famous luchadors of all time and a genuine cross-cultural star in Mexico, when you remember that his one Royal Rumble appearance he eliminated himself in. Number 85, Scotty 2 Hotty comes between brothers, 2001. There was a look of pure dread and fear across the usually upbeat Scotty 2 Hotty's face when his number came up in the 2001 Rumble. Poor Scotty knew that he was in for the kicking of a lifetime if he dared enter the ring, as The Undertaker and Kane both locked the match down. But the Too Cool member was booked to gamely try his luck anyway, and let's just say the bucket hats didn't stay on his head for long. Scotty was handed about 40 seconds of involvement on the night, and most of those seconds saw him soiling himself as he walked down to the ring. A menacing Brothers of Destruction awaited him. They punted Scotty from the match without even breaking a sweat. Then the arena came unglued as Steve Austin entered soon after, and suddenly Scotty 2 Hotty was old news. Scotty did a bang-up job of selling his fear here. He acted as an excellent lead-in to the mania of Stone Cold, and that shouldn't be forgotten. In 2001, he got his ass kicked by a zombie in The Undertaker. In 2021, he returned to WWE as a zombie at WrestleMania Backlash. Long-term storytelling, folks. Number 84, Otis saves Mandy Rose, 2020. The Otis and Mandy Rose love affair proved to be one of 2020's breeziest WWE storylines. The unlikely romance was teased towards the end of 2019, but it didn't properly explode until the following year, and at the Rumble, Otis showed how much his peach, quote-unquote, meant to him by saving Mandy from elimination in the Women's Rumble. WWE's production team deserved a raise for the way they panned out to Rose laying on top of Otis right as it seemed she was a goner. The respective smiles on both of their faces said it all. Later, Sonya Deville, who was jealous of of Mandy finding love and didn't like heavy machinery at all, would ruin everything in storyline. Oh well, it was a special moment while it lasted. Fans popped big when they realized that Otis had saved the day. WWE surely knew they were onto something special with the couple as well. This was the start of Otis Mania in the company to a degree, and he'd keep that going all the way through the summer by winning Money in the Bank in one of the weirdest matches of all time. Poor guy. Number 83, Sami Zayn eliminates Johnny Knoxville, 2022. Most fans out there probably groaned a little bit when they saw Jackass star Johnny Knoxville bumming his way into a Royal Rumble spot in 2022. Knoxville ended up working just 90 seconds in the men's match before he was eliminated by Sami Zayn, so at the time, on the night, it felt like a thanks for coming type of situation. On the surface, it looked like a big fat nothing burger, but little did we know that one of the greatest celebrity matches of all time would come from it. Zayn eliminating Knoxville led to one of the most barmy WrestleMania matches ever a few months later. Knoxville and Sami had insane chemistry, and Zayn was willing to make a complete clown of himself to get the match over. None of that would have been possible had he scoffed at the Rumble spot and spat out the dummy backstage, and Sami was totally committed to the bit. He truly makes the best of everything that is given to him. Chemistry counts, and it was clear these dudes had it right away. Even so, no one could have predicted that they'd end up working such a fun comedy match on the main card at WrestleMania 38 after all of this. And it all began in the Rumble. Number 82, Titus World Slide, the greatest Royal Rumble. Daniel Bryan and Roderick Strong carving lumps out of each other's chests was a real highlight in the so-called greatest Royal Rumble, but it wasn't the main talking point coming out of the event. Braun Strowman winning a token belt wasn't the main talking point either. Neither was this geezer, Hiroki Sumi. Remember him? I do. No, screw all of this. The biggest headline and social media chatter belonged to one man, Titus O'Neil, because he fell on his face. Much like Taka Michinoku's painful faceplant from 2000, this wasn't meant to happen. Titus O'Neil sprinted out full energy, full speed in 2018, then slipped and slid headfirst right under the ring. It became strangely comedic when, fortunately, it was revealed that he hadn't hurt himself, which might well have happened. On commentary, Corey Graves remarked that he half expected to see Titus come shooting out the other side of the ring and crashing into the announce desk, which would have been even funnier if he somehow kept on going, flew out of the arena, entered orbit, and started a new life as the Titus Space Telescope. On the night, Titus probably wanted everybody to forget about this moment, but that would be impossible considering WWE literally made a storyline out of it as soon as they could. Poor guy. Number 81, Jim Duggan wins the first Rumble, 1988. Some older wrestling fans might see this one as a little bit low given what the Royal Rumble would go on to mean in later years. However, there just isn't a lot of conversation about Jim Duggan winning the first ever Rumble because it was a little bit different. There were only 20 people in it at this point. The 30-man format didn't come until the next year, and it is roundly considered a pretty odd starting point for such a tentpole event. But it was a very important night for Hacksaw nonetheless, and he's a personal favourite of mine, by the way, so if it was up to me, he'd be much higher on the list, but it's not Andy Murray's list, damn it. It's like 5 different people's, and that's fair. Duggan turfed the one-man gang out of the ring to celebrate after winning the match, and the fans were going wild for Jim, not giving a single dolt that there wasn't anything tangible coming out of it, because WWE didn't offer a WrestleMania title shot for the winner until 1993, and the WWF title at the time wasn't on the line until 1992. So Duggan moved on to his next endeavor pretty quickly. Jim is primarily remembered as a Rumble winner because it was the very first event. And when you're doing your annual Royal Rumble rewatch like I do, there's a good chance you skip over 1988. That's unfortunate, but understandable. The match didn't really develop that special feel until a few years later. But anyway, that's enough from me for now. Over to you, Gareth.
Cheers for the tag, Murray. Now let's whack out another 10 epic Rumble moments, baby. Number 80, Chris Jericho answers Dolph Ziggler, 2013. Having been gone from the company for 5 months, Chris Jericho made his return to WWE in spectacular fashion at the 2013 Royal Rumble. Jericho had been kayfabe fired by AJ Lee after losing a match to Dolph Ziggler the night after the prior year's SummerSlam. So when Ziggler entered the 2013 Rumble at number 1 and cut a promo about not caring who the second entrant was, the US Airways Center crowd popped big when Jericho's music hit, and he appeared in his customary light-up jacket. Lit up the room, he did. In reality, the future Le Champion had stepped away from the ring to tour with Fozzy, but he clearly not missed a step as he put in an impressive 48-minute Rumble shift. And who eliminated Jericho? Why, that'd be Dolph Ziggler, of course, with the rivalry between the two reignited and carrying on throughout the early part of the year. Number 79, R-Truth does R-Truth things, 2016. Now, while he is a former NWA World world's heavyweight champion, Ron Killings has had phenomenal longevity in the wrestling world due to being, well, an idiot. A lovable idiot, but still an idiot. Like myself. The R-Truth character is one who is forever clueless, who always gets the wrong end of the stick, and who manages to confuse Johnny Gargano for Shawn Michaels. And when it comes to the Royal Rumble match, Truth had a moment to remember back in 2016. As the 12th entrant in the Rumble, R-Truth arrived to find Kane, Roman Reigns, Chris Jericho, Kofi Kingston, Titus O'Neil, Ryback, and the debuting AJ Styles dotted around the ring. Rather than immediately enter the match and put the boots to any of these grapplers though, R-Truth opted to pull a ladder out from under the ring. Setting the ladder up in the center of the canvas, Truth was left flabbergasted to find no WWE Championship or Money in the Bank briefcase after climbing said ladder. You see, the Charlotte native wrongly thought he'd entered a ladder match rather than the Royal Rumble. What is he like? Instead, all that lay in wait for R-Truth was a swift elimination by Kane. Number 78, Bubba Ray Dudley's Philly Homecoming, 2015. Philadelphia is famously ECW country, with Paulie Dangerously's Land of Extreme having operated out of the southeast corner of Swanson and Rittner. And in terms of ECW legends, few are as revered as the Dudley Boys. As one would expect then, Philly's Wells Fargo Center went absolutely nuts when Bubba Ray Dudley was a surprise entrant in the 2015 Royal Rumble. Having been gone from WWE for 10 years by that point, Bubba entered at number 3, quickly eliminating both The Miz and R-Truth before himself being thrown out by Bray Wyatt. There also has to be plenty of praise here for The Miz, for he magnificently sold the shock of that Dudley Boys music hitting and Bubba strutting out to the ring. It was the same face we were all pulling, to be honest. Given that the Dudley Boys were back in WWE on a full-time basis by that August, you have to imagine that the Royal Rumble pop for Bubba Ray here likely played some part in that return too. Number 77, The Unstoppable Force meets The Immovable Object, 1993. While Andre the Giant's health meant plans to do something in-ring with him and Earthquake in 1991 had to be scrapped, Quake would get to face off with another behemoth 2 years later, that being Mr. Fuji's Yokozuna. By the time of the 1993 Royal Rumble, Earthquake had long cemented his reputation as an absolute monster, be that in singles action, tag team bouts, or in Rumble matches. This was someone who it took the combined effort of 6 men to eliminate from the 1990 Royal Rumble, and who put in a 25-minute shift in the 1991 Rumble before being last eliminated by eventual winner Hulk Hogan. With the mammoth Yokozuna on a tear after debuting in October 92, Yoko set about making light work of his first Royal Rumble match, eliminating Tatanka and Carlos Colon immediately after entering at the number 27 spot. And then fans salivated as Yokozuna and the then babyface Earthquake locked eyes, with the two big men getting into it, slapping meat. Unfortunately for Earthquake, his brief flurry against Yokozuna was cut short, and he received a belly-to-belly over the top rope for his trouble. Seeing a giant like Earthquake hit with a belly-to-belly in and of itself was unheard of, let alone as part of a Royal Rumble elimination, which yet again portrayed Yokozuna as a total beast on his way to emerging victorious in that particular Rumble. Number 76, Big Show's carnage-causing comeback, 2001. On his day, Big Show was a whole lot of chaotic fun to watch, and in terms of maximizing minutes, the behemoth had some of the most impactful few minutes in Royal Rumble history back in 2001. Having been sent down to OVW the prior August, Show was a surprise entrant in the 01 Rumble, arriving at number 23, slapping plenty of fools around, and then being eliminated himself barely 2 minutes later. It was fun while it lasted. First up, the former Giant threw out Test, then dumped K-Quick over the top rope, before delivering choke slams to Albert, Bradshaw, Val Venus, Hardcore Holly, and Kane, with only a low blow from The Rock bringing an end to this rampage. That kick to the balls was swiftly followed by The Rock eliminating Big Show with a clothesline. But even then, the powerhouse was not done, baby, choke slamming the People's Champion through the announce table before making his way to the back. What a ride! Number 75, Kane decimates Sabu, 2007. Look, if you're only ever going to be in one Royal Rumble match and not winning it, no, you're not going to amass any eliminations and likely will only be given a few minutes, you at least want to have a memorable exit, right? Case in point, Sabu in 2007, my friends. Here, the homicidal, suicidal, genocidal, death-defying maniac of ECW scored 0 eliminations and lasted barely 5 minutes. But people still talk about his awesome elimination to this very day. The lesson here, folks, always go out with a bang when you can. Like many a Royal Rumble elimination, this one came at the hands of Kane. After dumping out another ECW icon in the form of Tommy Dreamer, the Big Red machine turned his attention to Sabu. Unlike Dreamer though, Sabu actually put up a little bit of a fight before ultimately finding himself on the ring apron, just where a conveniently placed table was positioned too. The reaction from San Antonio's AT&T Center was a loud one, as Sabu wound up sprawled out through a rubble of wood and metal courtesy of a Kane chokeslam in one of the more memorable eliminations in Royal Rumble history. Number 74, a one-of-a-kind return, 2009. Speaking of ECW, having not competed for the company since a squash match surprise appearance on Raw's 15th anniversary at the end of 2007, the 2009 Royal Rumble featured the return of Rob Van Dam. Now, the whole effing show always guarantees a pretty strong reaction, but his home state Michigan crowd at Detroit's Joe Louis Arena meant RVD was even more loudly welcome than usual. What a pap. And in typical Van Dam fashion, he did not disappoint as he ran through a slew of his greatest hits against the likes of Kane, Cody Rhodes, Randy Orton, CM Punk, and Chris Jericho, with Jericho the one to eventually bring Van Dam's involvement to an end after a solid 15 minutes. It would be 4.5 years until Rob Van Dam returned to a WWE ring after this, being part of Money in the Bank 2013 and spending a stellar year back with the company. Number 73, The King's Pantomime Villain Routine, 1996. Wearing a dashing gold number, 1996 saw Jerry Lawler spend a whopping 36 minutes in the Royal Rumble. Well, kind of. The King was officially in the match for that time, but he spent the bulk of it hiding under the ring, popping his head out at several points to receive a raucous reaction that played out like the classic "he's behind you" pantomime routine. Entering the Rumble fourth, it was the arrival of Jake Roberts 6 minutes later that sent Lawler packing. More specifically, it was the giant snake that Jake brought with him that caused Lawler to hit the bricks. I mean, I would do the same. When Shawn Michaels later found himself out of the ring, one of several times the Heartbreak Kid took a walk, we ended up with a call and response where the crowd let Michaels know that Jerry Lawler was lurking behind the ring skirt. Ever the crowd-pleasing babyface at this point, Shawn took a peek under the ring for himself, dragged out a kicking and screaming Lawler, then formally eliminated the King from the match. Lawler was one of 8 people the sexy boy threw out on his way to winning his second consecutive Royal Rumble. Number 72, Piper and Snuka renew their legendary rivalry, 2008. The 2008 Royal Rumble may be famous for John Cena's shot return from a torn pec, but for fans of a certain vintage, even more memorable was the sight of seeing Roddy Piper and Jimmy Snuka once again locking horns. Snuka was the first of the two to enter the match, landing at number 18 and immediately dishing out some of his trademark headbutts and chops. But Superfly was then joined just 2 minutes later by Hot Rod, and the pair instantly reignited one of the all-time great rivalries, complete with a good old Piper eye poke for good measure. What a legend. Adding to the moment, the rest of the competitors in the match just stood still and took in these two legends of the business, with CM Punk in particular looking like he was having the time of his life seeing Piper and Snuka go at it one more time. That is, until the two WWE Hall of Famers were simultaneously eliminated by Kane. It's always bloody Kane. Now, this all went down in Madison Square Garden, the iconic building that played host to so many Piper versus Snuka battles, was just the icing on the cake, people. Number 71, Kevin Nash reverts to Diesel Power, 2011. By the time of the 2011 Royal Rumble, it had been over 8 years since Kevin Nash competed in a WWE ring. However, given that Big Sexy made various appearances on WWE programming, documentaries, and specials during those years, it wasn't necessarily a surprise to see Nash eventually make another Rumble appearance. What was surprising, though, was that Nash returned to his old Diesel persona when he turned up in 2011. For full context, the Diesel moniker had last been used 15 years prior, when Kev wrestled his final match under the then WWF banner before departing to WCW. Of course, that match against Shawn Michaels at Madison Square Garden on the 19th of May 1996 was followed by the infamous curtain call incident that no one has ever mentioned since. Ever. Ultimately, though, this 2011 outing as Diesel wasn't quite as successful as Big Daddy Cool's previous 2 Royal Rumbles, scoring 7 eliminations in 1994 and another 5 in 1996, with Wade Barrett eliminating the WWE Hall of Famer here after just a couple of minutes. Still, for those new generation fans out there, it was probably all kinds of awesome to hear that Diesel theme, see the Diesel gear, and see Kevin Nash roll back the years here, even if it was extremely brief. Up there I go, I've been chucked over the top rope. Now it's time for our next What Culture entrant in the mighty Andrew Pollard. Take it away, my man.
Big thanks as always, Gareth. And now on to number 70, John Morrison, Parkour King, 2011. That is where parkour pays off. Michael Cole excitedly spouted that line after watching John Morrison jump to safety from the barricade to the ring steps back in 2011. Yep, this was pretty much identical to the spot Naomi would work in 2019, but no one can blame her for borrowing from Morrison, as his antics got a big reaction at the time, and WWE still replays that clip to this very day. The Prince of Parkour had been coming into his own as a single star for a while back then, but it was moments like this that helped Morrison stick out from the rest of the mid-card pack. Number 69, Ty Dillinger enters at 10, 2017. It may not be quite worthy of making our own top 10 here, but Ty Dillinger's arrival in the 2017 Royal Rumble was an absolute belter, particularly for the live crowd at San Antonio's Alamodome. As the crowd did the traditional countdown from 10 to 0, the perfect 10 entered at the number 10 spot in a moment that stands as a true career highlight for Shawn Spears. Well, the entrance is a highlight at least, for Ty's involvement in the Rumble itself wasn't a particularly memorable one, lasting just over 5 minutes before being eliminated by an angry Braun Strowman. Number 68, Goldust's emotional comeback, 2002. There's a bit of a Mandela effect surrounding Goldust's comeback in 2002. Many fans remember Goldie being a shock surprise in that Rumble, but the bizarre one had actually been advertised ahead of time. After Dustin Rhodes accepted a buyout on his WCW AOL Time Warner contract a month or so earlier, WWF began running vignettes hyping Goldust's big return. Still, it was nevertheless a brilliant moment to see him make that return, entering the Royal Rumble at number 2 and working 12 minutes before The Undertaker eliminated Goldust. This was a big deal for Dustin personally, as he returned to his most famous gimmick for the first time in nearly 3 years. Number 67, Bunny vs. Beast, 2022. While he'd gotten physical in the previous year's Royal Rumble, Bad Bunny wasn't an official entrant in that match. Plus, it took place in the soul-sapping setting of the Thunderdome. Skip ahead to 2022 though, and the Dome America's Center saw Bad Bunny stroll into the Rumble in the often successful number 27 spot. Even better for the rapper turned wrestler, he chalked up a couple of eliminations in the shape of Sheamus and Dolph Ziggler. And then he ran into the wall known as Brock Lesnar. The Beast Incarnate had just eliminated Randy Orton and would soon manhandle Matt Riddle over the top rope, but Brock took a moment out to deliver a monumental F5 to Bad Bunny before sending him packing back to his Grammy Awards winning day job. Number 6, Jade Cargill arrives in WWE 2024. Some ominous laughter, a storm is coming, and genuine superstar music accompanied Jade Cargill to the ring in January 2024. Jade looked like a star from head to toe as she made her WWE debut, eliminating Nia Jax, Naomi, and Becky Lynch in a way that certainly grabbed the attention. This moment may rank a little low for some fans, but Cargill's best Royal Rumble moments obviously lie ahead of her, and Jade has so much potential for even greater Royal Rumble outings in the coming years. Number 65, Now Can You Dig That, Sucker, 2011. Having left the company in 2007 and spent a few years in TNA, 2011 saw Booker T make his WWE return as a surprise entrant in the Royal Rumble. With CM Punk and his new Nexus cleaning house, Punk himself scoring an impressive 7 eliminations, Booker T arrived at number 21. There was a scissor kick, there was a bookend, there was even a spinneroonie, and then there was an elimination after barely a minute, courtesy of my fellow Welshman, Mason Ryan. How's it going, Mason? Still, there'd be plenty more to come for Booker T back in WWE, as he'd soon join the SmackDown commentary team and continue to work as a sporadic in-ring talent, most notably in a feud against Cody Rhodes. Number 64, a star-studded 6-man showdown, 2018. Was it the biggest Royal Rumble moment ever? Hardly, but the tension was thick as Finn Balor, Roman Reigns, and Shinsuke Nakamura squared off with John Cena, Randy Orton, and surprise package Rey Mysterio. People couldn't wait to see what was going to happen next as the fresher talent of the day faced off with the old guard. The order of elimination went Orton, Mysterio, Balor, Cena, before Shinsuke Nakamura eliminated Roman Reigns to win the whole thing and cemented himself a WrestleMania spot. Nakamura had been a sensation in NXT, and this was as hot as he's ever been on the main roster. It's just a shame that his Mania match with AJ Styles was a smidge disappointing, and that Shinsuke has since spent most of his time spinning his wheels in the mid-card. Number 63, Bob Backlund breaks the hour mark, 1993. Looking every bit like he just hopped out of a time machine into the soon-to-be-dubbed new generation, 1970s and 80s relic Bob Backlund had a tough task on his hands to appeal to a younger WWF demographic. That'd be mission impossible for Backlund, but he did earn a ton of respect by lasting 1 hour, 1 minute and 10 seconds in the 1993 Rumble, and scoring a couple of eliminations in Fatu and Rick Martel. Backlund was absolutely spent by the time he was chucked out second to last by the monstrous Yokozuna. Ric Flair had shattered the hour mark in 1992, but Backlund was booked to go just a little bit longer. Sure, there was a lot of sitting around and teasing elimination, but everything Bob Backlund did here fit the gimmick perfectly of a cagey veteran trying to defy the odds. Number 62, Karma comes to the Rumble, 2012. Karma should have been an automatic win for WWE's women's division, offering something different to anyone else on the roster, and with her work opposite Gail Kim in TNA as Awesome Kong, showing she was willing to sell under the right circumstances. Shortly after her debut though, Karma would step away from the ring after announcing she was pregnant. So her 2012 return at the Royal Rumble was quite the shock, as she followed in the footsteps of Chyna and Beth Phoenix by mixing it up with the guys. Karma scared Michael Cole senseless and tossed out Hunico before Dolph Ziggler put an end to her WrestleMania dreams. Unfortunately, Karma was released by the company later that year, with her remaining one of the biggest what-ifs in WWE history. Number 61, Ain't He Great? 2019. One for myself and the Michael Hamflets of the world here, as for the longest time it appeared that a return to WWE in any sort of capacity was completely out of the question for Jeff Jarrett. This was the same man whose exit from the WWF in 1999 was a controversial one, somebody who Vince McMahon publicly dumped on after the purchase of WCW, and someone whose time with TNA involved plentiful shots at WWE over the years. As the saying goes, never say never in the wrestling business. In the case of Double J, a shock but extremely warranted WWE Hall of Fame induction came in 2018, followed by being hired as a producer. And to top it off, for fans of the third generation star, the 2019 Royal Rumble saw Jeff Jarrett compete in a WWE ring for the first time in nearly 20 years. Perfectly lined up, Elias was number 1 in that year's Men's Rumble, starting things off with one of his traditional concerts. At number 2, Jeff Jarrett's old theme music hit, and the veteran strutted his way out in an extremely familiar outfit. Of course, Jeff would be eliminated by the time Shinsuke Nakamura entered at number 3, but the Chosen One got a nice amount of mic time to interact with Elias, and a chase field crowd that certainly thought JEFFJARRETT was indeed pretty darn great. And with that, the hot tag is made to Adam Wilborn.
Cheers, Andrew. Number 60, Ronda Rousey debuts. Here's another moment starring someone who wasn't actually a Royal Rumble entrant. Asuka was about to choose whether to face Alexa Bliss or Charlotte Flair at WrestleMania 34. Look how that turned out. When Ronda Rousey romped out looking rowdy to take her WWE bow and indulge in some good old-fashioned sign-pointing goodness. This was an unbelievable debut at the time, and mainstream news outlets gobbled up every chance to shout from the rooftops about Ronda as a pro wrestler. Obviously, things wouldn't pan out the way anyone wanted long-term, but my word, what a first impression. Perhaps this would be even higher on the list too, had Rousey clicked with wrestling over her time here. Sadly, she seemed incapable of accepting criticism and didn't seem to understand that she wouldn't always be the most popular character on TV. What a debut though. Number 59, the Warlord sets a record. I think my intro to that entry lasted longer than the Warlord in 1989. He simply jogged to the ring, posed on the apron, entered the ring and got immediately clotheslined over the top by Hulk Hogan. The Powers of Pain man's official time in the Royal Rumble being just 2 seconds. For the Warlord, that time would stand for 20 years as the shortest Royal Rumble participation, but more on that later. Number 58, cracks within the Shield. The 2014 Royal Rumble is such a strange one to revisit, with the final WWE appearance of CM Punk for 9 years, the return of Batista, and infamously the Rumble where poor Rey Mysterio was booed out of the building simply because he wasn't Daniel Bryan. But it was also the Rumble where the cracks really started to show in the Shield. While Roman, Dean, and Seth would work together in dominant fashion, amassing a whopping 18 eliminations between them, the teamwork would crash to a halt thanks to Dean Ambrose. Spotting an opportunity to toss Roman Reigns over the top, the plan not only spectacularly backfired on Ambrose, but it also saw Seth Rollins eliminated too. After the lunatic fringe had failed in his attempt to eliminate Roman, the big dog repaid the favor by throwing out both of his Shield buddies. Unsurprisingly, the Shield would be no more just 5 months later. The only real surprise, though, was that it was Rollins to turn on his brothers and not Dean Ambrose. Number 57, DDP returns with a bang. For WCW fans, the Diamond Dallas Page who turned up in the WWF in 2001 was a shell of the DDP who'd become a hugely popular part of WCW programming and a 3-time world champion. Through no fault of his own, Gone was the cool as all hell man who memorably defeated Randy Savage. Gone was the badass babyface who went to war with various iterations of the NWO. Gone was the figure who'd pushed Goldberg to his absolute limit, and Gone was the person who at one time was the People's Champion. Instead, what we got was a creepy stalker. But fans reacted big when DDP popped up in the 2015 Royal Rumble. This was only a short appearance from the WWE Hall of Famer, being dumped out by Rusev after a couple of minutes. We also got some awesome looking diamond cutters on Stardust. I wonder what happened to him. Fandango and Bray Wyatt. To know of the relationship Dallas Page has had with the Rhodes family over the decades makes it all the more special that the first person to face Page here and eat the first diamond cutter was none other than Cody Rhodes. Number 56. The new hardcore legend faces the original. Randy Orton's legend killer shtick was a whole bunch of fun, seeing the rookie getting to interact with all-time greats such as Harley Race, Jake Roberts, and Shawn Michaels. But no legend did more for the career of Randall Keith at that time than Mick Foley. Orton spent the end of 2003 labeling himself the new hardcore legend and trying to coax the Micker out of retirement for one more match, with Foley experiencing somewhat of a crisis of confidence at this prospect. Being the cocky young prick heel, Randy called Foley a coward and spat in his face. So when Mick Foley was a surprise entrant in the 2004 Royal Rumble, at the same time one Randy Orton happened to be in the match, the OG hardcore legend immediately went after the Evolution youngster, to the point that Foley hit one of his patented cactus clotheslines to eliminate both Randy and himself. The physicality didn't stop there either, with Mick continuing to put a beat down on Orton around the ringside area, which would nicely lead to Foley and The Rock taking on Orton, Batista, and Ric Flair at WrestleMania 20, before we then got Foley versus Orton in an excellent, brutal war at Backlash that June. Something that did a hell of a job at legitimizing Randy Orton and showing a tougher side to the then 24-year-old. Number 55. Beth Phoenix, Best the Great Khali. In 2010, the Glamazon hit the ring at number 6 and made her mark within around 90 seconds. Beth worked one of the most unique eliminations in Rumble history by snogging the face off of the Great Khali and then sneakily pulling him over the top rope. Never the most stable on his feet, Khali fell for the trick and awkwardly fell out of the match. Not to worry though, because CM Punk had his back seconds later, dumping Phoenix out and ending the party. Beth's Khali elimination made waves, however, and people still talk about it today, which is precisely why it's in this list. Number 54. Vader's post-elimination meltdown. Vince McMahon rushed new monster Vader into action at the 1996 Royal Rumble. The intimidating ex-WCW incomer was actually nursing an injury and wasn't able to show his best, but the boss decreed that he enter the Rumble anyway and get tossed out by eventual winner and babyface opponent Shawn Michaels. But it's what happened next that earns Vader a spot. The furious beast re-entered the ring and bloody wrecked everything. He even threw HBK out of the ring, but the announcers made sure to note that the rules had changed and anyone already eliminated couldn't affect the match like they could in the past. So Shawn was still in, but Vader left an impression on everyone during one of the WWF's biggest pay-per-views. Number 53. Too Cool's Mid-Rumble Dance-Off. Too Cool are my favorite tag team of all time. Me and Phil Chambers really should dress like them one Halloween, but anyway, this is one of the reasons why. In 2000, they got their Madison Square Garden moments and pressed pause on the Royal Rumble match to get everyone dancing. Jerry Lawler could not believe what he was seeing as his son Grandmaster Sexay and pals performed a quick dance-off whilst the bout was still in progress. MSG jived along with the trio before Rikishi eliminated both of his Too Cool cohorts. It was all fair in love and war. Scotty and Sexay decided to forgive their partner, and the act continued without splitting until closer to the end of the year when Big Quiche became a big bad man. You know, and tried to kill Stone Cold Steve Austin. Number 52. Paul London's insane elimination. In 2005, Snitsky clotheslined Paul London off the ring apron to the floor, and that single bump became known as one of the most dazzling Rumble exits ever. London effectively performed a shooting star press as he bumped to the outside. Attend pretty much any indie show with a Rumble variant on the card and you'll likely see something similar to this. I mean, indie workers have been emulating Paul for over 20 years. He made more of a splash in 3 minutes than most make in the entire match. Snitsky didn't last too much longer than Paul London anyway. Batista eliminated him, but not before Gino sent Paul spinning to the mat. Padding around ringside or not, that had to hurt at least a little. Ouch. Number 51, it takes a king to know a king. This, fellow fans, is a Wrestling 101 masterclass in understanding your role next to some of the biggest stars on the roster. The king crept out from behind the commentary desk to enter at number 22, and he tried to sneak up on Bret Hart as the Hitman had Stone Cold Steve Austin locked in a sharpshooter submission. However, unbeknownst to the king, Hart had eyes in the back of his head. He spotted Jerry coming in and socked him hard with a stiff punch. Lawler went sailing right back over the top rope, and in a nice moment, Jerry said, "It takes a king," before leaving the table, and upon returning, finished with, "To know a king." Excellent stuff. Over to you, Simon Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Wilborn. I appreciate that, and we shall go on to number 50. Logan Paul and Ricochet collide in midair in 2023. I mean, if you ever wanted to see the smack of flesh meeting in midair, all you need to do is head to the Aladome in Texas and see Ricochet and Logan Paul going absolutely nuts. Commentary also lost its mind because Michael Cole couldn't believe this, and Pat McAfee even blurted out, "What just happened?" They basically fell silent from that point and let the live crowd take over. And they certainly did. We got a standing ovation. It just goes to show that timing is everything, because the rhythm that Ricochet and Paul had here meant they collided in midair in a way that nobody else is probably ever going to do. Even a 1 second split difference could have ruined this, but instead they took their bat and they hit a home run. It is totally, woefully stunning. I think Logan Paul got more praise for this just because people expected it from Ricochet. He's been doing it for the last decade or so, but either way, we need to clap our hands for both of these guys. I remember seeing it at the time, and it was like two aliens had come to Earth and performed a maneuver that I may never see again. Number 49, John Cena confronts the new Nexus in 2011. So this was two pretty good back-to-back entrants, because not only did we get a surprise at number 21 during the 2011 Royal Rumble as Booker T came back, but who arrived at number 22? John Cena. Cena had a bigger mission here as well, other than try to win the thing, because he was desperate to try and destroy CM Punk's new Nexus. He did that too by eliminating David Otunga, Michael McGillicuddy, and Mason Ryan before he turned his big head and started to look at ringleader Punk. And yes, the 2011 Royal Rumble is remembered as an over-bloated 40-man affair. I don't know why we needed those 10 extra guys, but Cena coming out to whoop the Nexus's ass, given that it was an additional story, well, it's one of the bout's brightest spots. So I suppose if CM Punk and John Cena do work together in 2025 during Cena's retirement tour, CM may be able to use this. I mean, it probably still does irk him to this day. Number 48, Demolition Enter as the first two in 1989. So do not forget the whole every man for himself thing was very fresh in 1989. So when the first two entrants in that Royal Rumble were Axe and Smash, well, people couldn't believe it. They can't fight each other. They're a tag team. Also, keep it in your mind that this was only the second televised Rumble and the first ever on pay-per-view. So straight away, we were sending new stories out to the WWE Universe that anything was possible. Fans in Houston absolutely lost their minds as well, because guess who walked down the aisle at number 3? It was Andre the Flipping Giant. What the hell weren't we gonna do? Of course, over the years, this got more predictable, but that was not the case back in the late 80s. So when you finally saw two buddies going at it because they wanted to main event WrestleMania and win the Raw list of Rumbles, well, I tell you, it was pretty damn cool, and actually still is when you go and watch it today. You can feel the atmosphere in the room. Number 47, Bushwhacker Luke marches in, and then out again in 1991. So we've already talked about it. I love goofy wrestling for life. This moment was an absolute all-timer. Once again, when you know you got 30 people in a match and 29 of them have to lose, you may as well come up with some comedy, which is when Luke from the Bushwhackers came up with one of the best plans ever. Now, he didn't enter into the 1991 Rumble until number 27, but actually it wouldn't have mattered. As soon as his music hit, he did start doing his Bushwhacker dance when he got in the ring, and Earthquake grabbed him, marched him over to the other side of the squared circle, threw him over the top rope when Luke landed on the floor and continued to do his stupid strut. I mean, I must have seen this clip 742 times, and it never stops me laughing. I would also say that when this happened, the 1991 Royal Rumble needed something like this. It become a little bit of a schmoz. And listen, off the top of your head, who won this damn Royal Rumble? I bet you don't remember, but everybody remembers Bushwhacker Luke. Number 46, Randy Orton RKO's Nia Jax in 2019. So I don't care what anybody says. Ever since Nia Jax's return to WWE, she has been absolutely brilliant. I mean, you know exactly what she is going to do, but she always does it well. So if you want to get mad at me, you can, I don't care. Before she did come back for a second run, though, she did surprise the world, because in 2019, she enters the Men's Royal Rumble. which was doubly crazy because we had a women's one too. She made sure to pull double duty because I guess she was just desperate for a title shot. The reason she got in this is because she beat up R-Truth and took his number 30 spot. She also ended Mustafa Ali's match and suckered Rey Mysterio into hitting the 619 on Randy Orton. And after that, it went bad. Dolph Ziggler hit her with a super kick. Mysterio then got her with his finisher when, of course, Randy turned around and went, "Ha ha, I'm gonna RKO your ass," and he did. I mean, talk about a thunderous pop. It was Mysterio too who got to actually eliminate Nia as well, and I actually thought this was a nice skit to end the men's 2019 Royal Rumble. I mean, imagine Orton had hit the RKO on Truth instead. That would have been fine, but we would not be talking about it now. Number 45, the Sock and Snake connection in 2012. So Mick Foley will always be mostly remembered for what he did in the 1998 Royal Rumble because we got the three faces of Foley, but I also personally enjoyed what he did in 2012 with Santino Marella. I mean, the Royal Rumble has always been good for standoffs in the sense that we've had Hulk Hogan look at the Ultimate Warrior, Shawn Michaels looking at The Undertaker, and Cody Rhodes looking at CM Punk. But in 2012, we decided that Mick and Santino should stare into each other's eyes as one released his Cobra and the other released his sock puppet. The St. Louis Scott Trade Center totally ate this up too because they wanted to see a war of things on people's fingers when that damn Epico entered the match. And well, it didn't go well for him. He got hit with the Cobra and put in the mandible claw before they threw him over the top rope. It was just so great to see neither each other backing down because they believed in their stupid gimmick. Actually, eventually it was Cody Rhodes and The Miz that broke things up. The future American Nightmare was also the guy to eliminate both Santino and Mick. There's another one for your trivia card. Who the hell saw that coming? And I tell you, he would not do this in 2024. Even Cody Rhodes would get booed. Number 44, The Man Meets the Dead Man in 2017. 2.5 years before that Super Showdown match, the 2017 Royal Rumble saw Goldberg and The Undertaker share a ring for the first time ever. The one-time poster boy of WCW met the so-called conscience of the WWF, and really this was two white-hot monsters from the Monday Night Wars coming face-to-face. It didn't last that long as most of these guys decided to eliminate Rusev, Baron Corbin and Luke Harper instead, but still. When The Undertaker did look at Goldberg and Goldberg looked at The Undertaker, it was one hell of a kick for fans on that night, and they roared with approval. We got some physicality too in the sense that Goldberg would hit his patented spear, but he then got distracted by the already mentioned Harper elimination, which is when The Undertaker said bye-bye and threw Billy over the top rope. Number 43, solving a giant conundrum in 1989. Andre the Giant was forever kept strong on TV because he was so massive, and it also posed the question for the first time, he's so big, how the hell are we ever going to throw him out of the Royal Rumble? We pushed this hard in 1989 because that is what everybody was talking about. Nobody is strong enough to do this. This clearly became a huge talking point for the powers that be because they didn't want to ruin the Giant's aura. So what did they come up with? Well, Andre can just eliminate himself. That's right. It was still kind of stupid though, because do you know why he did this? Well, it's because Andre the Giant was scared of snakes. So when the already gone Jake Roberts returned to the ring with Damien, Andre thought flub this and he was done. Really though, the thing that the WWF cared about the most is that Andre always looked strong. So at least here, if he stepped over the top rope, I guess we could see him as a little bit human, but that he could still overhead press a car. It also set up a Jake versus Giant match at WrestleMania later that year. I guess that makes sense. Number 42, a straight edge sermon in 2010. It's not often you see somebody cut a promo mid-Royal Rumble. That's exactly what CM Punk did during the 2010 version. This was during his great turn as the leader of the Straight Edge Society, and after Punk had entered at number 3 and eliminated Evan Bourne and Dolph Ziggler, Serena Deeb handed him a microphone, where he did indeed proceed to deliver a sermon to the Atlanta crowd. It also meant when JTG entered next, he was instantly eliminated and CM Punk carried on talking. The Great Khali was then here, but he got thrown out by Beth Phoenix, so Punk decided he would get rid of Beth, and then guess what he did? He carried on with his sermon. I can continue with this as well because Zack Ryder then said hello, and Zack Ryder's feet hit the floor as CM Punk continued to talk on the microphone. Of course, this all ended when Triple H arrived in the 2010 Royal Rumble to finish all of this. That is a different story for a different day. Number 41, Team Hell Knows issues in 2013. So who would imagine that pairing one of the most dominant monsters in WWE history with the best technical wrestler maybe ever would lead to such comedy gold? Of course, Kane and Daniel Bryan were involved in plenty of fantastic matches during their time together as Team Hell No, but just as memorable, if not more so, was how comedic the interactions between the two were. One of these brilliant moments came during the 2013 Royal Rumble. Because having successfully retained the WWE Tag Team titles against Cody Rhodes and Damien Sandow earlier in the night, both members of the team entered the Royal Rumble. Because he was unable to help himself though, Bryan almost instantly took an opportunity to eliminate Kane, as the Big Red Machine looked at him like he was really sad. It also meant when Bryan himself was sent flying to the outside by Cesaro, he landed in the arms of his partner, meaning Kane now had the decision to make. Did he put Bryan back on the apron or drop him to his doom? And of course, he threw him on the floor and Daniel Bryan was out. It also tied into the whole yes, 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 no, no, no thing, and you should probably watch this today. I mean, it's a little bit cheesy, but it will make you smile. That's me done for now as well, so I'll tag Wilborn back in. You go get them, my friend.
Thanks, Simon. Number 40, Andre gets demolished. As mentioned previously, if the legendary Andre the Giant was ever to be eliminated by somebody in a Royal Rumble, it would have to be for a very specific reason and lead to something very meaningful. In that regard, the 1990 Rumble did a great job in how it treated Andre's exit. At that time, the 8th Wonder of the World was one half of the WWF Tag Team Champions with Haku, a good friend of ours, of course, having defeated Demolition for those belts only a few weeks before the Royal Rumble. With the plan being to switch the titles back to Axe and Smash at WrestleMania 6, one way to add further flavor to that rematch was by having Demolition and the Colossal Connection share some time in the ring during the Rumble match. Shockingly, the combined might of Demolition managed to eliminate Andre, which was sold as a huge deal by the commentary team and was reacted to like a huge deal too by the Orlando Arena crowd. Further stirring the pot, Haku would later eliminate Smash as these two teams lined up to do battle once again at that year's Showcase of the Immortals. A match that not only got the WWF Tag Team titles back on Demolition, but served as the final televised match of Andre the Giant's WWF career. Number 39, Yokozuna punishes Randy Savage's stupidity. While he's obviously one of the all-time greats, the Macho Man was at times not the smartest tool in the box, particularly when it came to Royal Rumbles. In 1993, Randy Savage entered the Rumble at 30 and found himself in the final two with Mr. Fuji's Yokozuna. The problem is, Randy seemed to forget one of the basic fundamental rules of the Royal Rumble. You can't win by pinfall, mate. So after getting Yokozuna off his feet and hitting his patented elbow drop, Macho inexplicably tried to pin the big lad, and that would be his downfall, as Yoko kicked out of the pin with such force that it sent Randy flying over the top rope. Undoubtedly, it was a heck of a bump from Randy Savage to go from a pinning position to propelling himself over the top rope to the ringside area, and it did its job in being yet another way to make Yokozuna look like an unstoppable, unbeatable monster. Number 38, Santino Marella, record breaker. The Milan Miracle very much embraced the entertainment side of sports entertainment during his time with the market leader, and one of the many memorable moments from Morella's career came in 2009 when he broke a record set by the Warlord back in 1989. As mentioned, the Warlord lasted a mere 2 seconds in the 89 Royal Rumble, being immediately dumped out of the match by Hulk Hogan, and for 20 years that would stand as the record for the shortest time spent in a Rumble until Santino Marella went one better and spent just 1 solitary second in the 2009 Royal Rumble. Full of piss and vinegar, Santino sprinted down to the ring at the number 28 position, determined to make an impression on the slew of superstars that awaited him. Unfortunately, what was also awaiting him was an immediate clothesline from Kane, and yes, that sent him straight over the top rope, where he then pleaded with referee Charles Robinson that he wasn't ready in an attempt to void the elimination. Also, in this entry, I want to give a quick shout out to Chelsea Green, who pulled a similar stunt in 2023, managing just 5 seconds in that year's Rumble and leading to her excellent Karen character transformation. Number 37, the Hurricane bites off more than he can chew. God loves a try, alright? Only a few months into his initial Hurricane run, Shane Helms got a little bit too big for his boots in the 2002 Royal Rumble. Entering at 23, the Hurricane arrived at a time when there were just 2 men in the ring. The problem was they were Stone Cold Steve Austin and Triple H. With both of these main event stars down and out, Helms' eyes lit up at the prospect of a double chokeslam as the 2 future Hall of Famers staggered to their feet. Brilliantly, Austin and Trips' faces went from the anguish of having a fella's hand around their throat to looking at each other in disbelief upon realizing it's the Hurricane, who they quickly eliminated before restarting their own heated rivalry. Number 36, The Rock's confused face. On the heels of Batista being booed out the building for winning the previous year's Rumble, 2015 again ended with raucous boos as Roman Reigns emerged as the victor. And for The Rock, he was clearly not expecting that sort of reaction when he raised his cousin's hand. Having earlier saved Roman from a big Big Show and Kane beatdown. Ugh. Rocky stuck around to watch Reigns last eliminate Rusev to win the Royal Rumble. But man, did Philadelphia not like that outcome. Of course, Philly fans are amongst the most passionate and rabid in the game, and they certainly let Rock, Roman, and WWE as a whole know they were already sick of Roman Reigns being shoved down their throats as the company's new poster boy. It wasn't just Philadelphia fed up though. This was the Royal Rumble that famously led to #cancel WWE Network trending on Twitter for the next week or so. What a team they'd make at WrestleMania 40 though. Ugh. Number 35. Kofi gets inventive at the Rumble. Kofi Mania has been running wild at the Rumble for a long old time now. The New Day member has performed numerous escape acts during the match that left fans in absolute awe. His amazing handstand act wowed everyone in 2012, and then Kingston followed that up by using one of the commentary team's chairs as a pogo stick to avoid elimination in 2013. Amongst other things, he's also used Big E's shoulders, pancakes, the ring post, and even an Adam Rose-led troop of rosebuds to stay in the match. Things had to go wrong eventually though. In 2022, he tried to land on the guardrail and, well, he did, but his feet also touched the mat. The ref sent him to the back because everyone had seen it. Then again, can't wait to see what he's got planned for 2025. Number 34. HBK gets fooled by a devious double act. Fans in Boston were fuming with Chris Jericho and Christian at the 2003 Royal Rumble. Why? Well, both stopped another top-notch Shawn Michaels performance from happening and then had the cheek to laugh about it. Christian didn't officially enter the match until number 6, but appeared on behalf of Jericho in the number 2 spot. Confused by the cosplay act, HBK was blinded by Y2J. This devious plan worked a treat when Jericho later dumped Shawn out of the match after just 2 minutes of heartbreaking action. WWE got the reaction they were looking for then. Everything about it was perfect. Michaels gushed following a wicked chair shot, and even number 3, Chris Nowinski, decided to steer clear and just let Y2J have his fun. This moment was booked so well, it's worth a revisit if you haven't seen it since the 2003 Rumble aired. Number 33, Shawn Michaels and Kurt Angle make magic. Kurt Angle was incensed that Shawn Michaels chucked him out after only 37 seconds in the 2005 match. I mean, the Olympian had come in at number 20 and seemed well placed to last until at least the final 4 or so, but no, Shawn escaped an ankle lock and super kicked Angle right out the ring over the top rope. Bye, sexy Kurt. Booked to see red, Angle got back in the ring and started hammering HBK, and then as revenge, he eliminated one of the match's favorites from contention and continued attacking him at ringside. This would of course be used as fuel to set up the mouth-watering WrestleMania 21 clash between both men a few months later. Number 32, Bayley gets her flowers. Every WrestleMania success story has to start somewhere, and for Bayley, it all kicked off when she won the 2024 Women's Royal Rumble by lasting over an hour from the number 3 slot. It felt great to see Bayley get her moment at the Rumble and go on to win the whole thing. She also ousted 7 different workers from the match: Candice LeRae, Indy Hartwell, Bianca Belair, Tegan Knox, Liv Morgan, Maxine Dupri, and Tiffany Stratton. Now all she needs to do is bring back the Bayley buddies and a good entrance theme, and all will be right in the world. Number 31, The Rock upsets the Big Show. The 2000 Royal Rumble match is remembered for 3 things. Number 1, Taka Michinoku's painful face plant. Number 2, the out-of-nowhere Too Cool dance spot. And number 3, Big Show bitching and complaining during the road to WrestleMania about how he was cheated out of a win by The Rock. Big Show, of course, went to dump Rocky out over the top, but the Great One held onto the ropes and Show's gigantic frame tumbled over instead. The Rock was announced the winner and MSG popped. Yes, closer inspection and various camera angles did reveal that Rock's feet might have touched too, but still, The Rock won! All of this, of course, set wheels in motion for the coming 4-way at Mania, and yes, looking back, just going with The Rock versus Triple H for the main event might have been more satisfying, but come on, guys, a McMahon in every corner. The Rumble's conclusion was a handy reminder of just how over Rocky was with the hardcore fans in New York. And now, over to you, Andrew Pollard.
A big thanks to Adam Wilborn there as we move on to number 30. Randy Savage goes after Jake Roberts, 1992. When he entered the 92 Rumble at number 21, the Macho Man wasted 0 time taking it to rival Jake the Snake Roberts. Of course, Jake had previously had his snake bite Savage, not to mention poor Elizabeth had been terrorized by him too. So there was plenty of bad blood lingering between Randy and Roberts, which resulted in Savage eliminating Jake break before, somewhat surprisingly, diving out onto Roberts and then being allowed back into the match. Yeah, the rules on that matter have changed a little over the years, and the logic in 1992 was that you couldn't eliminate yourself. Either way, the fans got a massive kick out of seeing the Macho Man taking out Jake the Snake Roberts. Number 29, Bret Hart's stunning leg sell, 1994. Oh, be still my beating heart, for 1994 was a selling masterclass from Bret the Hitman Hart. Having had his leg kicked out of his leg by his brother Owen earlier in the night, Bret sold the pain of that injury fantastically when it came time for the Royal Rumble match. The excellence of execution, limped and hobbled his way to the ring, grimacing as the announcers wondered how Bret would be able to function in a match as dangerous as the Royal Rumble, where many a heel took advantage of the obvious target on the Hitman's leg. This entry is simply a celebration of an all-time sell job from one of the greatest to ever lace up a pair of boots. And that's not without even talking about the outcome of the 1994 Royal Rumble, but more on that later. Number 28, the Royal Rumble welcomes marked man Steve Austin, 1998. Heading into the 1998 Royal Rumble, Steve Austin had a bounty on his head, and that would be the show-long theme here, with various members of the roster wanting that payoff for taking out Stone Cold. In a brilliant moment, every wrestler stopped dead in their tracks when Austin's music hit at number 24, all turn in to face the entranceway and get themselves a nice old payday. Stone Cold was smarter than the average bear though, boo-boo, and entered the ring from behind, having come through the crowd, where he immediately put a beating on anything that moved, all soundtracked amazingly by Jim Ross. Austin would get the Royal Rumble win, go on to WrestleMania 14 to face Shawn Michaels, and the rest, as they say, is history. Number 27, quadruple mistakes, 2005. The 2005 Royal Rumble famously ended somewhat disastrously, with John Cena and Batista accidentally falling to the floor at the same time, which was then followed by Vince McMahon tearing both quads as he stormed to the ring to restart the match. McMahon just looked so odd, sat in the ring, barking instructions at panicked referees and two of his confused top stars. By the time all was said and done though, the match was restarted to determine the winner, with the original plan stuck to as Dave Batista got the win, while Vince McMahon would end up having surgery on both his quads the very next day. Number 26, Warrior and Hogan collide, 1990. Words cannot do justice to how pumped WWF fans were to see Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior go nose to nose at the 1990 Royal Rumble. The Ultimate One entered first, coming in at 21, and then Hulkster, he followed at 25. Both men obviously received huge pops, but the biggest reaction came when the two stars were eventually given a minute to stand face to face. It was shoulder blocks, posturing, and a double clothesline, and Hogan later accidentally eliminating the Warrior. He has a habit of that, but that's all fans needed to see to get excitement levels up for the Ultimate Challenge at WrestleMania 6 later that year. Number 25, so nearly the most unlikely winner, 2011. One final Santino Marella mention here, and boy is it a doozy. Going into each Royal Rumble, of course, there's always a couple of favourites to score the win and earn themselves a WrestleMania main event. Safe to say, poor Santino Marella was never amongst that rarefied air. In the 2011 Rumble, the apparent final four were John Cena, Randy Orton, Alberto Del Rio, and Wade Barrett. Now, Cena and Orton were made men and multiple-time former world champions. Del Rio was being presented as a big deal and would win his first WWE World title later that year, and Barrett was fresh off the whole Nexus stuff and had been battling the likes of Cena, Orton, and CM Punk. The point being, these were all talents who didn't feel out of place in a Final Four at that point in time. The Miz, on commentary, would sneakily eliminate Cena to build towards their WrestleMania 27 match. Orton would dump Wade Barrett, and Alberto Del Rio would quickly throw out Randy. And as ADR started to celebrate though, Boston's TD Garden lost its mind as Santino Marella, of all people, appeared in the ring, having been selling a Sheamus Bro kick on the outside, but having not been eliminated. Could Santino shock the world, eliminate Alberto Del Rio, and head to WrestleMania? He certainly tried. Unfortunately for the Milan Miracle, Del Rio saw him coming, pulled down the top rope, and Morella's own momentum caused him to be eliminated. So close, but so far, Santino. Number 24, the American Nightmare returns to make his mark, 2023. Having been out of action for 8 months, it was announced ahead of time that Cody Rhodes would make his grand return to action at the 2023 Royal Rumble. Of course, not just did Cody return to the ring there, but he'd win the whole thing, entering at number 30, scoring 5 eliminations, and last eliminating Gunther. Some may question the presentation of Rhodes and Gunther here, with the babyface Cody coming in for a 15-minute stint, in comparison to the villainous Ring General having entered at number 1 and put in a mammoth 1 hour and 11-minute shift that stands as an all-timer of a Rumble performance. Regardless, San Antonio's Alamodome ate it up, and the American Nightmare was on his way to his first WrestleMania main event. Number 23, Diesel goes elimination crazy, 1994. 1994 was a huge year for Kevin Nash, with Big Sexy not only winning the first title of his career, but becoming a Grand Slam champion by the time all was said and done, defeating Razor Ramon for the Intercontinental title in April, teaming with Shawn Michaels to beat the Head Shrinkers to win the tag titles in August, and finally squashing Bob Backlund to become WWF champion in November. And kickstarting 1994 was a massively impressive Royal Rumble outing for Nash under his Diesel persona. The 7th entrant in the match, Big Daddy Cool went on a tear, eliminating Bart Gunn, Scott Steiner, Owen Hart, Kwang, Bob Backlund, Billy Gunn, and Virgil. God love Virgil. In turn, setting a record for most consecutive Royal Rumble eliminations with 7. And when it was time to bring an end to Diesel's run of dominance, it took the combined efforts of Bam Bam Bigelow, Crush, Mabel, Sparky Plug, and technically Shawn Michaels. He may have been a no-good heel at this point in time, but the loud cheers received by Diesel on that night sowed the seeds for a babyface turn later in the year, and of course the inevitable feud with the Heartbreak Kid. Number 22, Christian returns to the ring, 2021. Truthfully, this one would have ranked a little higher had it not taken place in the dull, depressing setting of the Thunderdome. Quietly retiring in 2014, no grand announcement, no pomp and circumstance, not even a reflective video package, Christian's music hitting in the 2021 Royal Rumble is a moment so many fans rightly lost their mind to. Previous concussion issues meant that Captain Charisma was seemingly done as an in-ring talent, and was instead nowadays a talking head on pre-show panels, network specials, and all that sort of jazz. One of the most underrated, underappreciated talents of his generation, Christian had somewhat started to get his flowers in retirement. It was just a massive shame that this came a little too late and that the Canadian didn't receive more praise when he was active. While we all lost our minds watching at home, there was a tinge of disappointment that Christian entered the 2021 Royal Rumble at 24 to the flat, hollow reaction of that Thunderdome setup. Still, it was all kinds of cool to see him lace him up again, and even cooler and genuinely emotional to see Christian share a hug with his old buddy Edge. Surprisingly, Christian's WWE contract would expire shortly after this Rumble appearance, and he'd rock up in AEW just a couple of months later. Number 21, Mr. Perfect sends Ric Flair back in, 1993. Having previously served as the Nature Boy's executive consultant during Ric Flair's WWF title pursuits of the previous year, Mr. Perfect famously split away from Flair ahead of the 92 Survivor Series. So, by the time of the 1993 Royal Rumble, these former allies were now heated rivals, and that intensity was on full display when Perfect entered the Rumble at number 10 and made an immediate beeline for Flair. As the ever-great Bobby Heenan so brilliantly put it, Perfect doesn't want to win the Royal Rumble, he wants to put Flair in a hospital. Ric Flair sold his ass off here, both in terms of bumping and in his general body language, while Kurt Hennig was such an amazing, explosive babyface in the right situation. And when Mr. Perfect finally eliminated Ric Flair, the crowd reacted in a major way as Perfect taunted the distraught Nature Boy from the ring. Of course, the following night's Raw saw Mr. Perfect defeat Ric Flair in a phenomenal loser leaves WWF bout that was Flair's final televised match with the company for 9 years. And with that, I'll hand things over to what cultures wrestling's own slice of perfection, Mr. Gareth Morgan.
Thank you for that, Sir Pollard. Now it's time for me to get my stuff in for another 10 entries. Number 20, the Rattlesnake's reaction to the Hitman, 1997. Famously, the 1997 Royal Rumble featured several moments where Steve Austin had the ring all to himself. As the match entered the business end of proceedings, Stone Cold dumped Mark Merrow and Owen Hart, took a moment to himself, threw out Savio Vega, then took another moment to himself, and then took out Jesse James before taking a breather on the top turnbuckle. The story was that Austin was on a roll, baby, effortlessly throwing out whichever man dared to next enter the match. And then, well, then the iconic opening note of Bret Hart's music hit. Entering at 21, the Hitman stormed to the ring with purpose, making it clear he was coming to whip the ass of a man he'd done battle with throughout 1996. For Austin, he ran the gamut of emotions, from shock to panic to eventually ushering Hart into the ring, where the two would then exchange right hands. By the time all was said and done with the Rumble, Bret eliminated Austin, only for the referees to bloody miss that elimination, leading to the Texas Rattlesnake eventually dumping out Hart to win the whole match in underhand fashion, giving Stone Cold a massive win, adding further to Bret's frustrations at constantly being screwed, and nicely having plenty of fire already in place when the two were somewhat haphazardly thrown together for WrestleMania 13 after a certain someone lost their smile. They didn't have a bad match though, did they? Number 19, Cody goes back-to-back 2024. The men's 2024 Royal Rumble was a whole bunch of fun, with many fans viewing Cody Rhodes, CM Punk, and possibly even Gunther as being the most likely to emerge victorious. And that trio would indeed make up the match's final 3. We fans know our stuff, don't we? For the second year running, the ring general would be eliminated by the American Nightmare, leaving the fascinating prospect of Cody Rhodes and CM Punk Punk squaring off. I still need this full singles match in modern day WWE, damn it. In a Rumble rarity, Punk and Rhodes battled on for nearly 10 minutes before Cody blocked a GTS and threw the Second City Saint over the tap. He then made it clear he was coming for Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 40, regardless of creative shenanigans from The Rock, of course. Not only did this make Cody Rhodes only the 4th person ever to win back-to-back Rumbles, but he was also the first person to do so in a quarter of a century. Impressive. Number 18, CM Punk wrestling in a WWE ring again, 2024. Sticking with the 2024 Royal Rumble, and the simple sight of CM Punk wrestling in a WWE ring again felt like some sort of fever dream. Now sure, Punk had worked a couple of house show matches against Dominic Mysterio the month before the Rumble, but this was the Second City Saint in his gear in a WWE ring on one of the biggest events of the year for the first time in 10 years. It still doesn't seem real, to be honest. Infamously, the final match of CM Punk's previous run was the 2014 Royal Rumble, and for the longest time it felt utterly unthinkable to ever see the Punker back in WWE. So when the straight edge superstar came out at number 27 in 2024, it was refreshingly surreal to see him enter a match that had Dirty Dom, Damian Priest, and Gunter in it, and would soon be joined by Ricochet and Sami Zayn, all men that Punk had never wrestled. Added to that, Cody Rhodes, The Miz, Jey Uso, and Drew McIntyre, the other men in the Rumble during Punk's time in the match, were all at vastly different places to where they were the last time they tangled with the former AEW World Champion. Granted, it may have resulted in an unfortunate triceps injury that put him on the sidelines for a long old time, but man oh man was it great to see CM Punk back competing in a WWE ring again. It was indeed clobbering time once again. Number 17, The Heartbreak Kid has a breakdown, 2010. In 2010, Shawn Michaels was a desperate man, my friends. Having failed to end The Undertaker's streak at WrestleMania 25, the showstopper wanted one more crack at the dead man at Mania 26. Unfortunately for Michaels, though, it was a one-and-done opportunity in the eyes of Taker, who bluntly refused the offer of a WrestleMania rematch. Given how The Undertaker was the World Heavyweight Champion by the time of the 2010 Royal Rumble, the Heartbreak Kid saw this as an opportunity to win the Rumble and challenge the Phenom at WrestleMania 26. It made sense. But this was all or nothing for Shawn. His last chance to get that rematch and prove that he could beat The Undertaker at the Showcase of the Immortals. It was all going so well for Michaels too, entering at number 18, making it to the final 4, and scoring 6 eliminations, including his D-Generation X cohort Triple H in a move that showed just how serious HBK really was. But sadly for Shawn, Batista would bring his WrestleMania dream to a crashing halt on Big Dave's way to a final 3 alongside John Cena and eventual winner Edge. Making the Shawn Michaels elimination all the more memorable was just how desperately Michaels sold the moment as his fingers clawed at the ring ropes as he fell to the outside. Oh, so close, yet so far. Shawn then, he lost his S-word. He attacked a couple of referees and then screamed his way to the back. He was not happy, bless him. As for that Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels WrestleMania 26 match, though, Michaels would eventually screw Taker out of the World Heavyweight title at that year's Elimination Chamber, helping longtime rival Chris Jericho in the process, no less, and put his own career on the line in order to convince the dead man for that Mania rematch. And he never came out of retirement after losing that match, you know? Nope, never, ever. La, shut up. Number 16, A Perfect Return, 2002. Few could have predicted the final 4 of the 2002 Royal Rumble would be Triple H, Steve Austin, Kurt Angle, and Mr. Perfect? To the delight of many fans, that is exactly what we got though, with Kurt Hennig making his return to WWE as a surprise entrance at the number 25 spot. That iconic Mr. Perfect music hit, and out he walked in the famed blue singlet, throwing his towel behind his back and catching it, of course, and chewing gum. A perfect combo. Perfect would immediately take it to Trips and Austin, eventually eliminating Stone Cold with some help from Angle, and making it all the way to the final 3. Getting to see Mr. Perfect mix it up with Kurt Angle, Steve Austin, and a very different Triple H to their previous encounters, plus Rob Van Dam, Kane, Big Show, and Booker T, was just such a kick for fans of the veteran. And that's without even mentioning seeing the Perfect Plex and a slew of Hennig's greatest hits back on display in a WWF ring for the first time in over 5 years. Sadly, Mr. Perfect's full-time return to the company would come to an abrupt end just 4 months later, after the infamous plane ride from hell. But at least fans were left with that Royal Rumble memory, eh? Number 15, The Three Faces of Foley, 1998. He may never have won a Royal Rumble in his 5 attempts, well, 7 attempts, I guess. But Mick Foley certainly had some memorable moments in that January staple. And moments, plural, is definitely one way to describe the hardcore legend's involvement in the 1998 Rumble. As Cactus Jack, Foley started that Rumble at number 1, joined at number 2 by fellow loon Chainsaw Charlie. The two would use steel chairs and trash cans against each other and some of the other entrants in the match, before Charlie sent his tag team partner packing. And that was surely the end of Foley's night, right? But wait, who's that entering the Royal Rumble at number 16 later that same night? Why, it's Mankind, who'd soon eliminate Chainsaw Charlie and then get dumped himself by the artist formerly known as Goldust. The Micker still wasn't done though, for he'd resurface at number 27 in his Dude Love Guys. Unfortunately, this would be just as unsuccessful as those Cactus Jack and Mankind appearances though, with Dude dumped by Farouk. He may not have won the match, but it's still a Rumble performance, or performances, no one will ever forget. Number 14, the man comes around to replace Lana, 2019. Many were left a little bit surprised to see Becky Lynch tap out to SmackDown Women's Champion Asuka at the 2019 Royal Rumble. But that would not be the end of the man's involvement at that event, folks. She still had work to do. By the time the buzzer went to herald the arrival of number 28 in the Women's Royal Rumble match, the Chase Field crowd was already chanting for Becky Lynch. But instead of Becky, 28 brought out Lana. Unfortunately for her though, an ankle injury suffered on the pre-show meant she was very much limping to the ring. And when Nia Jax attacked Lana on her own way to the ring, that left the ravishing Russian down and out, as WWE officials, including one Fit Finlay, checked on her. Enter Becky Lynch. Chase Field went absolutely crazy when Lynch strolled out to plead her case for replacing poor Lana in the Rumble. Even more so, those in attendance went totally nuts when, with a wry smile, Finlay finally gave Becky the nod and her entrance music hit. The man had well and truly come around. Stomping to the ring, Becky Lynch would be confronted with the familiar face of Nia Jax, who the Irish lass kicker immediately took it to. Skip ahead 13 minutes and it would be Nia and then Charlotte Flair, who Becky would eliminate on her way to winning the whole Rumble and earning herself a main event spot at WrestleMania 35. Number 13, Maven shocks The Undertaker, 2002. A quick shout out to Maven for shooting himself near the top of just about any list looking at the best Rumble moments ever. His work during the 2002 match would certainly qualify as one of the most shocking. It came completely out of the blue and shows just how giving The Undertaker really was even back when he still had approximately a solid decade ahead of him as a full-timer. Maven dropkicked Taker right out of the ring and then looked like he regretted it immediately. That is a terrified man right there. Furious, the dead man decided to bust the tough enough rookie wide open and throw him out of the match too. This was a seriously dramatic exit for one of WWE's biggest legends. The gusher brought on by thinning blood with a little pre-match Jack Daniels obviously helped too. And this would end up being Maven's biggest landmark moment inside WWE rings. He didn't exactly live up to the high hopes that management had for him in the end, and was released in 2005, but at least he can say he entered the Royal Rumble history books. Number 12, Bret Hart and Lex Luger tumble over, 1994. Bret's stunning leg sell has already gone under the microscope earlier, but something bigger happened to the Hitman in January 94. He and fellow babyface hero Lex Luger tumbled out of the ring at exactly the same time. Unlike Batista and John Cena in 2005 though, this was completely intentional. Vince McMahon didn't have to tear any quads here too. Luger has always given Hart full credit for the spot's timing. Bret expertly worked the fall so that both he and Lex's feet hit the floor together. Honestly, it was flawless and proved Hart to be one of the most reliable wrestlers on McMahon's roster. Nothing like this had ever been done before in the Rumble, so it felt properly dramatic as everyone, including the referees, just floundered around confused. Who was the real winner? The WWF left that up to fans post-match. Referees raised Bret and Luger's arms in the air, and the live crowd's cheers pretty much decided who was going to be the next face champion. Hart definitely won that popularity contest despite sharing the spoils in the 1994 Rumble with then Hulk Hogan wannabe Lex. It was incredible stuff. Number 11, China makes history, 1999. Iconic ring announcer Howard Finkel was very specific when calling the Royal Rumble every man for himself before most matches. But in 1999, China changed the game by becoming the first woman to ever enter the famous brawl. She was number 30 and got to dump Mark Henry over the top before being eliminated herself by Steve Austin. In other words, the ninth wonder of the world made quite the impression in just 35 short seconds. Being honest, the main meat of the 99 Rumble centered around Austin and Mr. McMahon's battle of wills, and almost everyone else involved was a a secondary concern, really. Except China. She did way more with her 35 seconds than guys like Big Boss Man managed in 18 minutes. Female stars like Beth Phoenix and Karma would follow in China's footsteps eventually, but she was the first. In fact, this was one of the first bold steps towards an all-women's Rumble debuting almost 20 years later. China was a true revolutionary, folks. What a groundbreaking moment that was. And that all brings us nicely to our top 10 that will be brought to you by my fellow mighty egg, the great Andy H. Murray. Take it away, man.
Thank you very much, my fellow beautiful bald brother man. Right, let's take this puppy home. Number 10, Rey Mysterio wins it for Eddie Guerrero 2006. Nobody will ever forget the emotions that wrestling fans experienced heading in to the 2006 Rumble. Eddie Guerrero had passed away only a few months prior, and his fans had pinned their hopes on real-life friend Rey Mysterio winning to honor Eddie properly. WWE bought into that by putting Rey over big style in the 30-man match in January, and the tears fell almost as freely as the confetti. Mysterio paid tribute to his fallen friend with a masterful hour-long performance. It's often forgotten that Triple H was there with him at every step of the way and worked over an hour in the match himself, but he was eliminated second to last before Rey chucked Randy Orton over the top rope and seized his WrestleMania date with destiny. Miami was absolutely buzzing to see Rey win. He instantly became one of the most unlikely Royal Rumble winners ever, but it was richly deserved for more than just the Guerrero sentiment. Mysterio looked up to the heavens and said, "This one's for you, Eddie." It's timeless, it's emotional, and it's a really heartfelt piece of Royal Rumble history. Number 9, AJ Styles debuts 2016. There had been rumblings online for a while, but the entire wrestling world was left stunned when former TNA and New Japan standout AJ Styles strolled down the aisle at number 3 in the 2016 Royal Rumble, which Kevin Dunn almost completely buggered up by turning the cameras on Roman Reigns instead of AJ when he was making his entrance. Great stuff, mate. Roman was confused and wrestling fans were elated. It was almost trippy to see AJ shine so brightly in a Vince McMahon-led WWE. He'd been associated with TNA for so long that anyone watching the show had to rub their eyes and wonder if they were seeing things, but they weren't. Well, they kind of were. Styles was now a WWE full-timer, and this was just the beginning of a wildly successful run that nobody could have predicted. AJ went almost 30 minutes in the Rumble before he was lobbed out by Kevin Owens. He eliminated Curtis Axel and Tyler Breeze along the way before settling into a WrestleMania program with Chris Jericho. And thankfully, old Bugs Bunny saw fit to capture some of AJ's entrance in the end, which is just as well because the moment deserved more than just focusing on Roman Reigns' face. It's a nice face, don't get me wrong, but come on, it's a debut. Number 8, The Undertaker edges out Shawn Michaels in 2007. The Undertaker became the first wrestler to win a Royal Rumble from the number 30 position in 2007. That needed to happen because, frankly, announcers were beginning to look a little bit stupid about claiming this was the easiest spot to win from. If this spot is a huge advantage, then, you actually have to have a few people win from it occasionally to prove that. So, while these claims might have been true on paper, nobody had ever been booked to win from number 30, which rendered everything a little bit silly. But if you go back and watch the final few moments of the 2007 Royal Rumble, you are in for a treat. Undertaker and Shawn Michaels previewed their 2 WrestleMania epics by trading finishers before the Phenom had his day, eliminating HBK to win. That capped a workmanlike showing from The Undertaker, who had spent 13 minutes in the match despite entering last. What a shift! That's too long. Michaels went longer. He lasted 24 minutes before the final sprint versus one of his most famous opponents. Fans were on the edge of their seats at home and people were left standing in the building applauding as these 2 titans of WWE scrapped for supremacy and Mania magic. It was as intoxicating as it sounds, and you should probably relive it. 2 masters at the top of their game. Number 7, Vince McMahon beats Stone Cold, 1999. It would be a lie to call the 1999 Rumble one of the greatest ever. In fact, not many people in the match mattered in the grander scheme of things, other than Steve Austin, Vince McMahon, and Chyna, who made history by becoming the first woman to ever enter. There were long stretches with one wrestler in the ring, and cameras were cutting backstage quite a lot throughout. It did my head in, even as a 12-year-old. The whole match threatened to look overbooked, but the finish was something special. Austin and McMahon had entered as number 1 and 2, and then Stone Cold was taken to hospital following a backstage attack by members of the corporation. But in typical Austin fashion, he returned and re-entered the match as a horrified Vince sat on commentary. McMahon watched on as nobody claimed his $100,000 bonus for eliminating the Rattlesnake, but he ended up sneaking a win by the close of business. New WWE champion and corporation ally The Rock distracted Austin long enough for Vince to clumsily throw him over the top rope and hit the floor. The live crowd couldn't believe what they were seeing as an exhausted McMahon celebrated with his stooges and his son Shane, who is also a stooge, in the ring. The actual Rumble might have been pretty whack compared to some others, but the start and the finish were red hot, and Vince's win remains a huge moment in the most important feud in company history, Austin versus McMahon. Number 6, Drew McIntyre Claymore kicks Brock Lesnar out 2020. One moment from the 2020 Rumble lives rent-free in the minds of wrestling fans everywhere. You probably know what it is, and you also know that we haven't talked about it yet, so nudge nudge, wink wink. But first, everybody should revel in the beauty of the pop when Drew McIntyre smacked Brock Lesnar with a Claymore kick so hard it knocked the beast out of the ring and ended his night. Night night, Brock. Sleep well, son. Lesnar had been toying around with some other members of the roster since the start of the match. Guys like Big E, Keith Lee, and Braun Strowman had tried to go power for power with Brock and all failed. But not Drew McIntyre. He looked like $1,000,000 after booting Brock in the chops as an aghast Paul Heyman looked on while his meal ticket tumbled out of the match. Drew went on to win the match and secure a WrestleMania title shot at 36. Nobody would knew that it would end up being one of the weirdest WrestleManias ever thanks to the global pandemic. It's difficult to shake the idea that McIntyre was robbed of bigger pops than this in 2020, but man, what a goosebump-inducing reaction that Claymore got. Number 5, the Mega Powers threaten to boil over, 1989. The best WrestleMania moments have builds that create tension on the road and bubble over right before the big event. That was true for Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan in 1989. No, the Rumble wasn't quite what it would eventually become in the 90s, there was no doubt about that, and there was no WrestleMania title match up for grabs either, but that didn't prevent WWE from dropping clues for what the big title match might be. Mega Powers were on the brink of exploding, and here it came. Randy was left livid when Hulk accidentally eliminated him from contention in the Rumble. Hogan apologized and said he'd been trying to get rid of Bad News Brown instead. Macho Man accepted that, tentatively, and the soon-to-be ex-tag partners shook hands as the fans cheered. Jesse Ventura's line on commentary about Hogan clotheslining Miss Elizabeth if it meant stealing the spotlight was unbelievably good as well, and very accurate. Things were bubbling away nicely. It wouldn't be long before Randy turned on Hogan and portrayed him as a no-good sort with lust in his eyes for Elizabeth. The split story didn't technically start at the Rumble, but it was a major beat in the program. So just take some time and drink in all that retro goodness, folks. Number 4, HBK skins the cat, 1995. The 95 Royal Rumble gets a bunch of criticism for its shorter length and how thin the star power was on the roster. All of this is fair, but you don't see many people calling out the conclusion. If anything, Shawn Michaels dangling precariously with one foot already on the arena floor as another threatened to touch it has become one of the most memorable Rumble visuals. Davey Boy Smith, the British Bulldog, thought he'd won. His entrance music was playing and everything, which is the international sign of winning a match. That's when HBK defied gravity to skin the cat and pull his way back in over the ropes to axe-handle Bulldog in the back and send him out. Suddenly, Shawn had become the first ever person to go all the way from number 1 to the very end and win it. Unbelievable. Slow motion footage of Michaels teetering on the brink of elimination has been replayed countless times for decades ever since. It's typically shown before every single Rumble event for a reason. It's a classic moment. Shawn dangled just long enough to show that he was literally millimeters away from losing. If he was even a tiny margin off, the whole thing would have failed. But it did not fail, and it was an incredible finish. Number 3, John Cena shocks the world, 2008. John Cena has proven time and time again that he is a total freak when it comes to returning from injury. Give him an estimated timescale and he'll smash that with ease. The geezer is basically Lazarus, and never was this more evident and downright shocking than at the 2008 Rumble. For some background, Cena's pectoral muscle had completely torn off the bone during an October Raw match with Mr. Kennedy. Completely torn! It was gone! And this is the same injury, lest we forget, that Cody Rhodes had to miss 7 months for after Hell in a Cell 2022, and even then, Cody was ahead of schedule. So, despite being told that he would be out of action for a year, John Cena somehow returned in the Rumble at number 30, just 3 months after surgery. That is completely insane and unheard of. As such, Cena was the last person anyone expected to see in the Royal Rumble. Madison Square Garden went ballistic when Cena's music hit and the man himself smugly stood in the iconic entranceway, before the fans realized a few moments later that they kind of hated him and turned the reaction right around. It's one of my favorite Rumble moments ever for that reason. The organic, natural reaction was to cheer, but then the smart gene kicked in and the crowd went full internet. Still, that clearly didn't bother John as he walked out of Madison Square Garden with a Rumble win under his belt. Number 2, an emotional rated R return from retirement, 2020. If you want an example of the sheer emotion that pro wrestling can drum up from those involved in this business, or simply those of us who are watching at home as fans, the return of Edge at the 2020 Rumble is all you need to see. While 11 World Championships, various other titles, and a bunch of classic matches meant that Edge's career was very much a Hall of Fame one, that career was tragically taken away from Adam Copeland in 2011 when he was forced to retire early at just 37. This wasn't a case of somebody opting to retire with the ability to possibly be lured back either. He wasn't making this choice alone. This was a man seemingly being put on the sidelines with serious injury at the peak of their career with no real say on the matter. So when that music hit, when Alter Bridge hit at number 21 in 2020, it was genuinely one of those moments of disbelief, of ecstasy, and of a whole range of other emotions, as all perfectly summarized in the face of Edge himself. 9 years of his career had been taken away from him, but now Edge was standing in Houston's Minute Maid Park in front of more than 40,000 rabid wrestling fans once again. I mean, seriously, if the hair on your arms didn't pop up at this, then you might be dead inside, or at least just a little bit. This was wrestling at its emotional best, and not just from a kayfabe storytelling aspect, but also because an all-time great did what was deemed impossible, and he came back. It's a beautiful thing. And number 1, Fair to Flair, 1992. The greatest Royal Rumble match of all time, with the WWE title on the line in the Rumble itself for the first time ever, featuring an absolutely stacked list of competitors. Ric Flair's 1992 victory had to take the top spot on this list. Or, to grab a line from Bobby Heenan, you've got to be fair to Flair. There was star power dripping out of every pore of this match, with Flair joined in there by the likes of Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, Roddy Piper, The Undertaker, Sid Justice, Davey Boy Smith, Jake Roberts. I could go on and on and on. All names who had either been at one point or were about to become main event talents. Rick started at number 3, lasting an hour on the road to victory, dumping Sid for the win, and revisiting plenty of old rivalries along the way as Bobby Heenan and Gorilla Monsoon delivered a masterclass on commentary. In fact, Bobby the Brain Heenan's performance here is one of the singular most impressive things in WWE history. He stole the show, desperately begging for Rick to somehow stay in the match when elimination was threatened, then breathing a huge sigh of relief after every eventual escape. Hell, Bobby even praised Roddy Piper at a point as Hot Rod helped the Nature Boy, only for Heenan to immediately turn on Piper once he had started taking it to Flair once again. Rest in peace, Bobby, man. We miss you. And when you consider the iconic post-match interview as Ric Flair addressed the audience with a tear in my eye, the smug excitement of Heenan and Mr. Perfect and all of that good stuff, Mean Gene Okerlund telling a crew member to put out their cigarette, man, this is the stuff the wrestling dreams are made of. And it stands as the greatest moment in Royal Rumble history.